About 5 months ago, a friend of mine got expelled from his program because of bad marks. He was only halfway through his lease, and he didn't see a point of staying in the city since he was only here for school. He told me that if I wanted to take over his lease, as a subletter, he would only charge me half the rent, which I thought was a pretty sweet deal. So naturally, although I'm from this town, I thought it was time to leave my parents' place. I had already graduated, and although I had been looking for a new job for a while, I still felt like I couldn't miss out on the opportunity. So I took over his lease and moved into his place. The house itself is actually pretty nice. It's 3 floors, including the basement, and it's located near the university of my town, which is not a very safe area overall, but I spent a lot of my university years here and never felt unsafe. The room in the basement is pretty small, but cozy, and the only other room down here is a girl who's currently a student, and she's pretty quiet. Actually, all the girls living here are pretty good roommates. I wasn't thrilled about living with 3 girls, but now I don't see why I would have thought it was an issue. They're all pretty great and a good time. I'm the only one in the house who's not a student, but also the only one who is originally from this town. The other roommates are actually all from cities that are only about an hour or 2 away, at most, so unless there's something special going on, they all go home on weekends. My friend who got expelled also only lives 2 hours away, so he would always go home for the weekend as well. One thing I forgot to mention, which is pretty crucial to the story, is that the house actually has 5 rooms, but right when they all moved into the new place together, one of the girls had a seizure on her bed and passed away. This was pretty upsetting for everyone, and the landlord told them not to worry about finding anyone else. Their rent never went up or anything, and the room was left vacant. According to the landlord, he just found it insensitive to try and find someone because he didn't want to turn someone's death into a financial inconvenience. So, after the girl's death, the parents came and took her belongings out of the room, and it just remained empty since then. I actually never looked in there because it just remained locked, and I didn't really have much curiosity to see the room. Plus, it's on the 2nd floor, and I never go up there, so I never really paid any attention to it. The first weekend I spent there was pretty uneventful. I remember that I spent one night at my boyfriend's place, and then the next he slept over after we went out drinking at one of the college bars near the place. We were pretty wasted, so we passed out as soon as we got home. The next weekend, I was at home in my new room, and I couldn't sleep, so I decided to read a little bit. I was really enjoying the quietness of this new house, since the girls weren't home at all. I came from a Latino family, so this quiet and serene environment was pretty rare. I thought that I heard a few noises upstairs, so I figured that one of the girls had probably decided to stay the weekend at the house, or she was just getting some last-minute things ready before heading home. I really didn't think much of this thing. I wasn't very close with the roommates, so I didn't even bother asking them if they had any plans or if they had stayed home. I just felt like it was none of my business. The girl in the basement was for sure gone for the weekend because she apparently sleeps with the door locked and keeps it open when she's not home. One weekend, that same month, I woke up to pee and I could hear a toilet flushing upstairs, which was kind of weird since I knew that none of the girls were home. I was going to check it out, but in my tired state I was too lazy and just didn't care enough. It's funny, horror movies are supposed to make you paranoid, but the biggest lesson I got from them was there is always a rational explanation for things. This would prove to be my biggest mistake, though, because for a couple of months, I was always brushing things off and ironically creating irrational explanations to rationalize what I thought were irrational thoughts. For example, I heard creaking coming from the 2nd floor, and I figured one of the girls must have forgotten something and decided to come by to pick it up. The girls must have driven 2 hours down and 2 hours back to their hometown in the middle of the night to pick something up. Yeah. On Saturday, I woke up to get some water, and I noticed that the roommate in the basement was gone. Her door was open, and her car was not in the driveway. There weren't any cars in the driveway, but I should mention that one of the girls doesn't drive. A couple hours later, I woke up because I heard steps coming down into the basement. At this point, I yelled out the girl's name, who doesn't drive, because she is the only one who could have been in the house. I didn't get a reply, and I just heard the steps going back upstairs. At this point, I started getting uneasy about being home on the weekends, so I decided to just spend them at my boyfriend's house. One of the girls made a At this point, I started getting uneasy about being home on weekends, so I decided to just spend them at my boyfriend's house. One of the girls made a house Facebook page, which was supposed to address any issues like washing dishes or leaving messes, but it remained pretty inactive since everyone seemed to get along. I posted on there some creepy stuff was happening on weekends, and asked them if they could start letting me know if they were going to be home for the night or not. They seriously thought I was joking around. The replies were not receptive at all, and consisted of laughing my ass off, or, "Oh my god, you're so funny." Even my boyfriend agreed that I was being paranoid, because he too believed that everything has a rational and a perfect explanation. The thing is, when you say that everything has an explanation, you're only invalidating paranormal explanations or ghostly activity, which is not what I was implying at all. I have never believed in ghosts or spirits or any of that jazz, and I never claimed to when I spoke to my roommates or my boyfriend. They kept on saying that the house was old and made noises, but I know the difference between old house noises and someone walking down the stairs and back up the stairs. Fortunately, my roommates did start posting things on Facebook page to let me know they'd be gone. It was always to the effect of, "Hey, gay and fired. LOL, I won't be home this weekend, so don't worry about the ghosts." One weekend, they all let me know that they would not be home, and my boyfriend was on the midnight shift, so I had to spend the night on my own. My boyfriend called me on his break, and while I was on the phone with him, I heard noises on the main floor. I told him I was going to check it out, and he told me to go ahead because the motherfucker still thought I was being paranoid. As I said this, I heard the footsteps going back up to the second floor. Once I got to the main floor, there was nobody in the kitchen and all the doors to the house were locked. I was extremely paranoid and did not feel safe. My boyfriend calmed me down and convinced me that everything was okay. So I never went to the second floor, and it's probably best that I stayed on the main floor. After that weekend, I told my roommates in all seriousness that I was convinced that someone had been in our house at some point that night. I told them what I heard, and the bitches still claimed that it was the old house making noises. My boyfriend was almost permanently on midnights, so I did what I never wanted to do and started spending weekends at my parents' place. The girls still posted on the page whether or not they were leaving the house or not, and I decided that I should do the same, so I also started posting when I was and was not sleeping at the house. One Friday night, the Facebook page looked something like this. Roommate 1 not sleeping at home. Roommate 2 not sleeping at home. Roommate 3 staying home because of midterm exams. Me, I'm staying at my parents' house. The next morning, I receive a frantic text from one of the roommates saying that the roommate with the midterms had been attacked. Apparently, she was in her room studying and heard a noise right outside her bedroom. When she went out to inspect, she was greeted by a man walking out of the dead girl's room. She said the man looked rough, greasy hair, and just a dirty face. When they made eye contact, he held his finger up to his mouth and uttered a shh while smiling. The nail on his finger was long, and his beard was apparently really scraggly and uneven, like it only grew on certain parts of his face. She screamed out of instinct, even though she knew there was nobody in the house. He lunged at her as she tries to shut the door, and she wasn't beaten up too badly. He just growled and told her to shut her mouth and said something like, "I'm not gonna rape you, but you shut your mouth." He beat her, but not completely unconscious, and then when he walked out of her room, he went downstairs and walked out the front door. So he left the dead girl's room unlocked. My roommates locked herself in her room and called the police, who were there immediately. What's pretty creepy about the whole thing is that when they inspected the dead girl's room, they kept asking for clarification. So nobody's lived in this room for how long? Nobody has been renting this room, right? Did the parents take everything after the girl passed away? The guy had a really sweet setup, actually, and had brought his own small mattress and put over the bed frame. Obviously, the mattress was too small for the bed frame. He left most of his stuff because he probably didn't expect a confrontation that night. I don't think he knew she would be there that night, because she never was. It probably sucked for him when I moved in, because before me, the bastard had the whole house to himself for 2 days a week. The police did ask me quite a few questions, and were very interested in hearing my statement about hearing footsteps at night. My 3 roommates and my friend are now convinced that maybe the girl didn't die the way they said she did, and maybe he murdered her. But I think the autopsy would have been able to distinguish a murder from a seizure. In their defense, the whole thing is really creepy. We're not really sure how long the guy had been living there, but it's very likely that it had been for months. The theory is that the guy had been climbing through the window, so it's possible that he was even there at times when all of us were there. The police were really interested in talking to the landlord, because they want to know how the man found out about the vacant room. The landlord is a pretty decent guy, so I don't know if there's anything going on there. I don't even feel an "I told you so" attitude from this whole thing. I think that I'm just glad that the girl is okay, because she seems pretty shaken up. I just wish people were more willing to listen to me when I told them that I thought somebody was coming into our home. I even said it might be a squatter, which everyone laughed at. This happened very recently, so it might be a while before an update, but as of now, the man has not been found, but the police remain optimistic about finding him, whatever that means. This has been a pretty terrible month for me, and I don't know if I want to be at this house anymore. I don't have much left on the lease, and I recently lost my job, so it might be best for me to leave this place now. I doubt the guy will come back, because all of his stuff has been taken out, but I still find it creepy in this house. I definitely don't spend weekends here anymore.